Soweego, which is all about linking Wikidata to large catalogs. This is Marco here. In my former self, I was a research scientist in natural language processing and a Wikimedia Foundation grantee. But now I serve as a software engineer for the Wikimedia Foundation. And this has, I mean, it's not too much interesting for you, but it has disrupted the project, basically. So Soweego started as WMF project under the Project Grants program back a few years ago. So let me give you a little more context. There were two versions. The first one, which is done a few years ago, and it was all about a machine-learned record linkage system with the main goal of adding external identifier statements to Wikidata. So we're talking about interlinking Wikidata with target catalogs out there in the web. Then another grant, which should have been version 2 of Soweego, which was interrupted because I was hired by the Wikimedia Foundation, and it was all about a rule-based system for data validation. So once we had managed to link a given target catalog to Wikidata, then the idea here was to try to synchronize Wikidata to that given catalog by means of identifiers. So let's talk a little bit more about the first version. By introducing one of my favorite running examples, which is Elvis Presley. So here, on the left, you can see Elvis Presley as described by Wikidata. And on the right, you have the same person, still Elvis Presley, but described by MusicBrainz. And so the main goal here by Soweego is to link the Wikidata item describing Elvis Presley to the MusicBrainz item. For instance, MusicBrainz is just one of the target catalogs that was implemented in the first version. And so what's the task? Let me dive a little bit into more details here. So we're talking about record linkage, but you can call it fuzzy matching or entity linking or data integration. There are a lot of different terms there, but it's all about taking as input a pair of data sets. So here we take as input Wikidata as a source data set, and then we have an external catalog as a target data set, and the output will be a set of links in the form of Wikidata identifier statements. It's all about linked data, right? So this is what Wikidata is about, and this is the main goal that we're trying to achieve here. So let me give you a real-world example. You can see at the top of the screenshot the QID of Elvis Presley, and then Soweego added the MusicBrainz, the actual one, so it was just a short version here, but the full identifier with the link to the MusicBrainz catalog, as well as reference node saying how we did to retrieve this identifier. The motivation behind all this system is, let's try to increase Wikidata quality and trust. So by quality, we mean here identifiers, which enable ideally feedback loops between our beloved knowledge base and a given target catalog. So I believe this is quite important. And by trust here, it's still about referencing external reliable sources. And of course, here I say reliable, I should have put quotes because, yeah, I mean, we can probably debate for I don't know how many lives on the reliability of sources, but trust me that I tried my best to select good ones after a massive amount of community discussion before the beginning of the first Soweego version. How we do that through a standard record linkage workflow. Nothing super fancy here. It's a state-of-the-art way to link a pair of records through supervised machine learning. There are also a bunch of other ways to do that. You can do that rule-based as well. But it is known that machine learning should be the best system in theory. What are we targeting? So we're not targeting the whole Wikidata knowledge base because this would be a huge amount of work. I selected a big slice, which is people. So basically instance of humans. And then I realized that by importing the target catalogs into the implementation, we could expand that to works made by people. This was like just something that came up after the selection of the catalogs. So Music Brains, for instance, is a music database. So it talks about artists and musicians, and so then you have records, songs, and things like that. Okay, now let's dive into the second version of Soweego, which was developed until end of last year, more or less, and it's all about trying to implement some so-called validation criteria. So to run them, we have devised 3 of them. So the first one is data identifiers. The second one is URLs, links, but links, raw links. And then there's domain-specific data. And based on these criteria, we would like to apply actions on Wikidata content, but also since we are trying to enable a feedback loop with the target catalog communities, then we can submit some differences to those target communities. So let's go back to our running example. We have this. So we go number 1, linked Wikidata with Music Brains. So we do have this identifier statement. What we can do next? We look into the content of both. So Wikidata and Music Brains, for instance, and we try to apply criterion number 1, that identifier. So in Wikidata, suppose you have that link with a given Music Brains identifier, but then at a given point in time, we realize that for some reason Music Brains doesn't contain anymore that identifier. So what do we do here on the Wikidata side? We can deprecate that identifier statement. Said that, unfortunately, due to the interruption, to the early interruption of the Soweego 2 project, this was implemented in the code base, but it's not, unfortunately, not applied in the actual content of Wikidata. The second criterion is about URLs. So suppose that Elvis Presley in Wikidata has, I don't know, 7 URLs. Elvis Presley in Music Brains has 8. And then we compute the overlap of those, and we find that 3 overlap, for instance. It's just a dumb example. So what do? There's a let's say, quite complex, actually, amount of work in trying to parse those URLs into known Wikidata identifiers, external identifiers, by means of known properties like formatter URLs and the like. And as such, we can add, if we manage to parse those into actual identifiers, which would be much higher quality than just bare URLs, we can add the 5, so 8 minus 3 Wikidata identifier statements. And we can also say, we can also go to the MusicBrainz community and say, look, Wikidata has 4 additional URLs that you might be interested into. And this was done, so it's implemented, and also the Soweego bot managed to add all those identifier statements as well. So it's kind of, an expansion of the network. So we started with a one target catalog, and then we tried to look into it, and then we find other links to other catalogs as well. For instance, I don't know, Bandcamp or the good old MySpace. There's still URLs out there. So here's an example of what the bot added. For Elvis Presley, it found in MusicBrainz a URL which was not there in Wikidata at that time, last year. And then we managed to parse it into a music's match artist ID, which is a known external identifier. And then we just build this statement with a more, let's say, fine-grained reference node, since we care about references a lot. I've been discussing this a little bit with relevant community members, and then we came up with this reference node based on heuristics stated in the actual ID again, and of course the point in time when this piece of data was retrieved.
And Marco, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you're already a little bit over time, so if you could conclude as soon as you can. No worries.
Sorry, third and last criterion is about domain-specific data. So it basically depends on the catalog, and it will be like dates and or places, and the mechanism is the same. The only problem here is, and I will finish here, is that this kind of data, dates, birthplaces, are really controversial, and so we decided to put these data sets into the mismatch finder, which will be a tool that will be presented there. Okay, that's it. Thanks a lot.